If I could introduce myself, Christine Kilpatrick's my name. I'm the CEO of Melbourne Health, Royal Melbourne Hospital, and I'd just like to introduce two very important people. Firstly, Dr. Mike Catton, who is head of the Victorian Infectious Diseases Reference Laboratory, which we call VIDRL, and Mike is also the Deputy Director of the Doherty Institute, which is a partnership between the University of Melbourne and Royal Melbourne Hospital. And I also have beside me Julian Druce, who is the head of the Virus Identification Laboratory, and he's been intimately involved in this very important piece of work. So I'll hand over to Mike and Julian.
Thank you very much, Christine. So look, could I add my welcome to all of you today here to the Doherty Institute. I'd just like to start by saying how pleased we are to have been able to grow this virus in a very short space of time directly from a patient sample, and that's an art. And I guess Julian is the artist, who you'll possibly hear about on the technical detail. But much more importantly, that we've moved immediately to share this with our international colleagues to provide a toolkit that complements the modern molecular techniques that are so useful in diagnosis and development of vaccines and medicines. So there are some things that are just much easier to do when you have the virus in your hands, and there are expert laboratories internationally that haven't had access to the virus, and so this step makes it possible for a lot of things to move forward that have been delayed, and we're just delighted to have been able to fill that gap in the space between 2 a.m. Saturday morning, when the first case was diagnosed in Australia, and Monday, when we believe we had the virus growing in culture. So Julian and I will be very happy to take questions from you on anything you'd like to know. Thanks a lot.
So what's been involved in growing a virus, and what is the process? If you can step us through that, please.
Yeah, so look, it's an old school technique. The current diagnostics are very rapid and fast using molecular methods, but the old school techniques you have or rely on cell lines or cell sheets that grow in a single layer of cells on a flask, and you inoculate or place some patient material onto those cells, and you hope that the virus in the sample gets into the cells and infects the cells, and then will produce a pattern in the cells that demonstrates that the cells are dying, and that's what we see, and I think the image of that's been put up on the web, and so you can see that the cells actually die in the progression of infection, and so that's how we know the virus is happening. And we've used the same test on that material that we use in patients to assess the level of virus so that we know that the burden of virus or the amount of virus present is going up, and so we can prove that the virus is growing.
Is it a difficult thing to do?
So look, some viruses are very fussy in terms of the cells that they require to gain entry into the cells, so all viruses need the appropriate receptor on the cells to gain entry. So it's a little bit like a lock and key. And the virus has the key and the cell has the lock, and if the right things are present, the virus can get inside.
We happened to be hearing that it happened very quickly. Were you surprised at the rapid rate that it did occur?
Look, yes and no. We've grown a number of these family of viruses in the past, and you've probably heard of SARS and MERS coronavirus, and they both grow relatively quickly in cell culture. So in some ways it didn't. But the international interest is obviously fascinating, and the fact that other people have not yet grown it. But there's only been limited spread outside of China at the moment, so not too many people have had that ability, and we're uniquely placed here that we've got both a diagnostic lab that's doing that work, plus these old traditions.
Oh no, the intent is to get the actual virus. Well, there are several parts. The very first thing we're doing, which we're doing today, is to get genetic material extracted from the virus in the hands of public health labs in the various state jurisdictions, so they've got a positive control for their laboratory tests, because the testing we've been doing so far has been limited by the absence of a virus, or often even a synthetic positive control. So that's the very first thing, because that's directly about public health capacity in Australia. And then the next thing we do is to then ampule up, and this is Julian's territory more than mine, ampule up the virus itself for sharing with expert laboratories that are recommended to us by the World Health Organization as the first internationally with which the virus could be shared. So we'll work closely with WHO and take their advice on on who should receive the virus first.
Has culturing this dish been able to tell you anything about the virus? Have you learned anything new?
I'll defer to Julian on whether he learnt anything new looking down the microscope, but no, I'll let you take the technical.
Not really. Other than it may generate a lot of media attention, but no. Look, it hasn't. It's grown like other traditional coronaviruses in the past, and so in that capacity, nothing new. I've been in contact with a colleague in Germany, Christian Drosten, who is also very familiar with coronaviruses, and he pretty much discovered SARS. And he has given his advice on when to harvest the virus for onward shipment to important laboratories.
And something that's a bit of the fun part to maybe mention is obviously although the testing can be done in standard laboratories, you shouldn't culture exotic viruses like this outside secure high containment laboratories, and they're hard work to get in and out of. So we've had on the flask of the cell culture a video camera that has been linked up to, and Julian was able to share with me the link, so we're able to look from home at how the culture's going. So when I get up in the 3 a.m. in the morning for a glass of water, can log on and have a look at how the cells are going. So that was a bit of fun over the last few days. If you're into that sort of thing, and I guess perhaps we need to get out more, but we found that quite fun.